free is a better price than cheap. And this simple principle has been lost on many a business person. There are business models that involve free with, as you pointed out, adjacent revenue sources. And in fact, a viable model is free and then branding, service, and so forth and so on. And it's an important but different business model from what most of us are used to. A rule of economics is that eventually in manufacturing businesses, in mature businesses, the price of the good goes to essentially the marginal cost of its production and distribution. Well, in the digital world for digital goods, the marginal cost of distribution and manufacture is effectively zero or near zero. So certainly for that category of goods, it's reasonable to expect that the free model with ancillary branding and revenue opportunities is probably a very good thing. Obviously, for things which have some physical cost of production, you'll be losing money, in million units at a time unless you come up with some offsetting revenue. And so an example would be that you could imagine, telephony is a classic example. Most of the telephony physical infrastructure is a sunk cost. The cost of operating is not that great. It's mostly billing and so forth. So you could imagine a situation where telephony went from being billed by the minute to being billed by the purchase of the phone. You bought the phone, and in the cost of the phone was a part of that infrastructure, and then you could use the phone forever, right? Because the operating cost is so low. It's a little more complicated with wireless and so forth, but the principle makes sense. It's a different business model. A simple way of thinking is that there has to be some scarcity in an infinitely free pool. What's scarce? Well, it turns out that the brand that's most famous is actually pretty scarce because there's only one person who occupies that. So it's probably the case that if you have a big fight for a global brand, the person who owns the top brand probably has created something of value even though its components are not worth very much because of the competition around being number one or number two in these power laws. So that would be an example. Surely analytics, all the sort of consumer modeling, those are other examples of different businesses. Most people, I think, when they look at this, have to accept that at least in the digital world, the cost of transmission and distribution is not going to go up. It's on its way down. And that the people who build physical devices that connect to these devices and so forth will eventually morph their models into more of the prepaid model that I was describing because it'll be more consumer efficient.